Hello and welcome back to Providence PPM. Today's video is going to be a little bit longer. In the last video we went through just some very initial setup with system navigation and creating a business unit, setting up a user, setting up a planning resource. We talked a little bit about the system appearance functionality. Today we're going to cover a lot of the portfolio manager role setup options. So setting up your company info, setting up the strategic goals for the business unit, setting up management reserve threshold, OPEX, CAPEX categories. We're going to go through the portfolio definition and metrics definition. So quite a bit we're going to go through today. We'll basically step through all of the portfolio administrator or portfolio manager pages. So let's go ahead and get logged in. I'm going to log in with single sign-on again. As I mentioned previously in the other video, you can sign in with a username and password if you have not set up single sign-on at your company. So as you'll see, we have the demo business units. So as I mentioned in the previous video, that this is the project list. This is the landing page when you log in. Since this is a brand new business unit, we have not created any projects yet. So we will be doing that in another video. But the first thing we need to do, as I mentioned, is set up our portfolios and workflows. So we're going to navigate to our portfolios and workflows page. Now this will only be visible if you have Portfolio Manager access, and even if you have Portfolio Manager access, the only things you'll be able to see will be business units that you own. So as an admin I can see everything, but portfolio managers will only see business units that they own. So the first thing you'll notice, we have our pages here, our links to our other Portfolio Manager pages. So we have our company info configuration, portfolio and metrics definition, project phase definition, both for the PMO, the project management organization or program management organization, and the PDP, so the product development process. We have portfolio holiday definitions, and we have schedule templates. So we'll step through each one of these in due course here. So starting off, we've got our company details. This is just very high level, just, you know, what's the name of the company, what's your mission, what's your vision. These are more just for informational purposes, but they can be edited at any time if you guys do want to capture these. But the first real important piece here is going to be your strategic goals. So each business unit can suggest or define, I should say, their own business unit goals. So if I go to my main one, you'll see that I have created some just placeholder goals here. So you give it a name, you give it some description, but we'll jump back to our demo business unit here and we'll go ahead and create one. So just your first goal, so we'll call this demo strategic goal. And we'll just say that, you know, this goal is for demonstration purposes. And we'll just click add goal. And you'll see in another video how we can link these to our projects, but for now we're just defining them. Next we have our management reserve thresholds. So management reserve thresholds, for people who are familiar with project risk management, or even I'll call it product risk management, you'll likely be familiar with that terminology of the RPN. And basically what this is just, you know, how do we prioritize our risks based on likelihood and impact if they are to occur. And the reason we're defining these here is that there is automation built into Providence PPM that allows you to, at least for premium users, to automatically apply a certain amount of extra duration to project tasks that are associated with a project risk or multiple project risks, depending on that risk's RPN number. So for now, we're just going to set a couple of thresholds. Again, I'll talk more about how this gets applied in another video, but for now, we'll just set these up. Typically, people use a 1 to 5 scale for likelihood and impact, so 5 being the highest likelihood or highest impact, 1 being the lowest. So what we do is we take the multiplication of those, the product of those, and those are our threshold RPNs. So we'll just start with a min RPN of 1 and a max RPN of 5, and that'll be only a 2% reserve addition. And then we will do a 6 to 10, and that will be a 5% addition. And then we'll do an 11 to 15, that will be, let's call it 8% addition. And then we'll do a 16, we'll just go all the way up to 25, and let's say that's going to be a 12% addition. And we can always change these at any time. These are all editable and deletable. But it is important to configure these for some of the system functionality that we'll be looking at later. And I will revisit this functionality in that video just to make sure that we're all clear on how to set this up again. Next, we have our OPEX and CAPEX spend categories. So this is where we can try to get better definition for our company around what are our typical spend categories for each of these. So for OPEX, you know, it might be something as simple as labor. And this is just, you know, how are we capturing our labor spend on any given project. So just call this labor spend. And then we'll do another one for OPEX, and we'll just say that this, we need to account for raw materials that we're going to purchase. So raw materials needed for project work. And we'll go ahead and add category. And then we'll go ahead and add a CAPEX one as well, just for fun. So we'll call this equipment. Purchased for projects. Add category. And if you have quite a few of these, you can just import from Excel, very similar to some of our other functions in here in Providence. So let's say you've got a whole bunch of different OPEX and CAPEX categories that you'd like to be able to just upload quickly. If you're more comfortable doing that in Excel, all you have to do is click that Import Excel button, and it will bring up a pop-up dialog that will allow you to select whatever file you'd like to use to upload those different OPEX and CAPEX spend category options. Next thing we have on this page, or the last thing we have on this page, I should say, is our presentation template branding. So this allows the company to define their branding for colors and logos. You could do this manually, and what this will do is for any of the automated reports that the system generates, any PowerPoints, and there's multiple pages that do that, this will allow you to use your templates and your branding. So you know, your presentation will come out looking pretty much exactly like it normally does based on your design. So you can either do this manually, as I said, and set your hex colors and your fonts and backgrounds and your logo and all that manually, or you can just simply upload a template presentation by clicking this button here, and it will open up a dialog box, and then you can select whichever template you'd like, and you'll see that it's uploaded my deck template and it is saved successfully. So we'll go ahead and just click the Save Presentation Branding just in case, although this does save automatically when you upload a deck. So no need to save necessarily, but if you have changed any of these colors or uploaded this manually, you would then press that Save Presentation Branding button. All right, next, let's move on to portfolio and metrics definition. So this is going to be one of the most important pages that we configure here. So for each business unit, we need to have at least one portfolio to create a project. So we can do that in a couple of different ways. We can create projects in a couple of different ways, and again, I'll cover that more in a different video. But we do need at least one portfolio created in order to generate projects. So for now, let's go ahead and just create a basic portfolio. We'll just call this new product development. Portfolio for new product development projects. So we'll go ahead and create that portfolio. So what we can do now is we can define what metrics are important for that portfolio. So what we want to do is give the company the ability to measure projects that are coming into the pipeline objectively. We want to have, as we'll call it, a dispassionate evaluation process as possible. And you can see over here in the project lifecycle, we have our project intake page, and that's where we will actually use these metrics that we have defined. And again, I'll go over that in a separate video on the project pipeline the project lifecycle, and just how that all works. But for now, let's go ahead and just define our metrics. So what we'll do is we're first going to select the portfolio that the metric applies to, and since we've only got one for this business unit, we'll just go ahead and select it. And let's create a 5-year revenue. So we'll just call this 5-year revenue. And then we're going to give it a weight. So we want each metric, the total weight should add up to 100%, but we want to make sure we have a good way of measuring how much impact this particular metric has on our scoring mechanisms that we'll use in our intake and our pipeline process. So because new product development is so focused on new revenue, or generally it is, we're going to give this a pretty heavy weight. So let's call this 45%. And we're going to set this up as a numeric metric with specified ranges. So you can see there's a couple of different types here that you can pick. So you can either have a numeric metric, or you can have a custom text metric, or you can have an alignment metric. And I'll create one of each so you can see what that looks like. This one's going to be a numeric metric with specified ranges, so I'm going to go ahead and add the metric. Now, once it's added, I can come down here to our metrics by portfolio and look at new product development. And here's my 5-year revenue, and then I can go into edit it, and here's where I can actually add my ranges. So let's go ahead and add some ranges to this. So we'll say that the minimum value we want to do is 100,000 to 500,000. And that will be a score of 1. And there's our first range. You can see it pops up down here during our in our current ranges and values section. The next one we'll do 500,001 to 1 million. And that will be a score of 3 if it's in that range. And then finally we'll do a top level 1, and we'll say it's 1,000,001 to 2 million. And we'll give that a score of 5 if it's in that range. And these are all customizable. You can set whatever ranges you'd like. You can even do more granular scoring. You can do 1 through 5. If you'd like to have more ranges for each category, for each metric. But for now, I'll just do those 3. So we'll go ahead and hit Save Metric. And there is our new 5-year revenue. And if I open it up again, you can see our ranges that we have previously set up. So that's all set up. The next one we're going to do is it's also for new product development, obviously, and we'll just call this strategic alignment. So we want to make sure that this new project is, we understand whether it's aligned to our business goals that we've set up here in our company info configuration, our strategic goals. So we'll call this strategic alignment. So let's give this a fairly high weight as well. We'll call this we'll call it 35%. And we'll say that that's just an alignment metric. So it's high, medium, or low. So that one we don't have to do anything with. It's preset to have high, medium, low on the intake page when you select new product development as your portfolio. And again, I'll go through the whole project pipeline process, but for now we just want to make sure we get our metrics set up properly. The final one we'll set up is going to be our custom text metric. So what we'll do here is we'll just do technical competency, and we'll give that weight of the remainder of the 100%, so it's 20%, so 45, 35. So we'll go ahead and add that metric there. Now what we'll have to do is for this one as well, we will have to define what those text options are. So we'll say that the first, the highest we have is that we are highly competent in this area, and that gives us a score of 5, so we add that option. The next we have is moderately competent. We have a score of 3. And then we have low competency for something maybe is way outside of your normal wheelhouse, but is something you still want to look at from a project perspective. So yeah, we'll go ahead and save that metric. So now we've got 3 metrics set up for that portfolio that give us a total of 100%. So we can go ahead and create a new project. And again, I'll walk through that in a separate video. The next thing we're going to look at is our project phase definition page. So what this does is it allows you to set up different phases for your projects that will enable the workflow mechanisms in the system. So you'll notice here on activities, there is actually a portfolio workflow requests page, and this is what allows you to use that functionality to approve the exit of one phase into another phase, and even just so that you can understand where a project is in its life cycle. So what we're going to first do is we'll just create some very basic PMO phases. So we'll just start off phase number 1. Phase name is initiation, and we'll just give it a initiation phase description. You can call it whatever you'd like. Do we need PMO approval required to exit this phase? I'm going to say no. We can just go ahead and move on once we're done with it. The next phase will be phase number 2, and we'll call this planning. These are pretty typical PMO phases for any of you who are versed in this kind of thing. And we'll call this just the planning phase. And I actually am going to go ahead and set up approval to exit this phase, just so we can demonstrate the workflow later on. So we'll go ahead and add that phase there. Then we'll call phase number 3, we'll call this execution. Execution phase. And then phase number 4, we'll call this closeout. Close out project. And then we'll go ahead and do approval for that as well. So we'll add that phase. So we've got a few phases now, and this will allow us to use some of the workflow capabilities later on in the project. You can do the same thing for product development. So let's say if you have a defined product development process at your company, so things like concept, feasibility, development, etc. This would be where you would define that. And the system allows users to choose in their project whether they want to use PMO phases or product development phases, depending on the scope of the project. Most projects, if they're not product development, likely will just use your PMO phases. But if you do have a defined product development process, you may want to be able to use those phases for reporting purposes and, again, just kind of project lifecycle management purposes. Next thing we'll go through is our portfolio holiday definitions. So what this does is this allows the team to define for the business unit which holidays need to be accounted for in the project planning. So by defining these, our project schedule page that we'll go through in another video will automatically schedule around these dates, just like Microsoft Project does. So if for anybody who's familiar with Microsoft Project, I'm sure you've seen this. Any holidays that have previously been defined will show up down here in the bottom section, so you can see on our other business unit I have already set up quite a few for each year. These are all just kind of US holidays. But for this one, we are going to set up a few. And as with the other parts of the system, you can import from Excel. So that's what I actually did for the US holidays. So you can get a whole list of holidays for the next several years if you'd like to just get them uploaded all at once, and you can import from Excel. Very, very easy to do, very quick. But for now, let's go ahead and add one manually. So let's just call this demo holiday. And then you're going to pick a start and end date. If it's just a single day that you need to plan for as a holiday, it'll be the same for both fields. But for this case, let's just do, we'll do a couple days. So we'll say April 16th through April 17th is our holiday. So we'll go ahead and add that holiday. And you'll see it shows up under 2026 holidays. So now our planning tools will plan around that date if tasks fall within that date range. Finally, we're going to look at the schedule templates. So this is a fun feature for companies that may do the same type of project over and over again. So if you don't want to recreate your schedules from scratch every time, you can actually create templates here. So you can click this new button, and we're just going to call this demo manual template. And you can give it a description if you'd like. I'm not going to bother right now. And as you can see, it creates a little Gantt chart over here. So we just click Add Task, and we'll just call this Template Task 1. And we can give it a duration of 5 days, say. And then we can add another task either by clicking this Add Task button or by clicking this plus button here on the top right of the chart. And we'll do Template Task 2. And we'll make this 6 days, and then we can go ahead and set the predecessor as template task 1. So any predecessors we just put as, just as you would in Microsoft Project, you just put the line number, and that will allow it to be a predecessor. So, and you can see that it auto schedules, so there you go. So we'll just do a couple tasks. You guys get the idea. We'll go ahead and hit Save Changes. That is now saved as a template. Now, another feature, though, let's say you've got something that's fairly complex. You don't want to do all that manual work in here. So let me go ahead and create a new one, and we'll just call this Demo Upload Template. Create. So what we can do is we can click this Import button, and if you're using Microsoft Project, you can do it directly from Microsoft Project, or you can do it from Excel or a CSV file. If you're going to do that, I recommend downloading the import template here, as you can see, and it will just give you the different columns that you need to make sure that you upload it correctly. I'm going to go ahead and do it from Microsoft Project here. So it'll bring up a dialog box, and it will then allow you to pick whichever schedule you would like to use. And then you just click Upload. And you can see it's importing the MS Project file there. And you can see it's imported those tasks. So, and it imports it just as it looked in Microsoft Project, with all the predecessors, all your deliverables, all your milestones, and it knows how to define all those automatically. And since you're uploading it, it will save automatically when you upload it. So that gives you the ability to upload those tasks. So it saves automatically when you upload it, as I mentioned. So that's it for today's video. That really walks through most of the major pieces of functionality for the portfolios and workflows pages. And this is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, what allows you to get all of the key things defined that you'll need to start using the system in a best practice manner once we get into our project lifecycle and actual project execution. Thanks again for watching today. Hope it's been helpful for you. We will catch you in the next video.